All right, says we're live here. How's everybody doing? Good afternoon, everybody out there. All right, give it just another minute or two here, I guess. Make sure everybody's tuned in and everything. It's kind of a cold, windy day today. They were only calling for not quite an inch of snow yesterday, and we actually got about 5 inches up where we're at. And so I had to do some work this morning, plowing and snow blowing and whatever else. Not a huge amount of snow, but I had to get that done, and we had to do a few little errands and things this morning. So that's why the live stream announcement wasn't out early today. So, but today we're going to talk about growing food, raising food, and finding food. Okay. Again, my experience, and I'm not an expert in all of these different things. In fact, I'm not an expert in any of them, but I'm learning, and I do have some experience with some of it. So, growing food. We'll talk first about growing food. A garden / orchard. Orchard for your fruit trees and whatever else. Garden for your different types of vegetables, or even some smaller fruits and whatever else. Questions that you have to ask yourself. First off, what crops grow best in your climate? Now, I have here the USDA plant hardiness zone map here, and you can look this up on your own. Google that term or whatever else, and you can see the kind of thing that grows best in your area. We're kind of up in here in this area up in there, if you can see the little magnifying glass. So there's a lot of plants that we can't grow here. I was born and raised down in southeastern Pennsylvania, which is down in the green area there. So gardening and everything else was a lot, easier down there. Again, if you saw the one off-grid seminar I did on warm versus cold climates, that's a big consideration, the kind of plants that you can grow. And there are actually plants that we can grow up here, especially the wild edibles, that aren't really going to grow too well down south. So kind of an interesting thing there. Another question would be, what type of soil do you have? If you're in a really mountainous area, you might not have very deep soil. You might have really not the best soil where you're at. And of course, you can get around that by doing raised bed gardens. You can also do what's called a hugelkultur, which is basically rotted logs or old rotting logs, and then you put dirt on top of that, and then you plant your garden on top of that. A lot of permaculture, you can study all that stuff too. Some really fascinating things with that. What about getting water for your crops? Do you get enough rain? Is there some way you can do kind of irrigation or something like that? That's another big thing to consider when growing food with a garden and whatever else. Protection from animals. Again, what type of animals do you have in your area? I'll tell a little funny story here. Not really funny, it was a tragic story. I planted some garlic on our property at one point in time, and there was an area where they had logged, and it was a lot of rotted wood and everything. So I thought, oh, it'll be kind of almost like a hugelkultur with the rotted wood underneath and some dirt on top of that. And so I was all happy, and I went out and took my garlic cloves and I stuck them in the ground, and everything. Not long after that, a week or so after that, they were actually starting to grow, and I thought, wow, this is great. I've never been much of a gardener. I'm more of a wild hunting, foraging type, but I thought, hey, this is great. We'll have garlic, fresh garlic here on our property and everything else. And I got up the one morning, I was walking out towards where I had my garden at, and hear this noise, and this big bull moose comes up out of the weeds, and he's chewing, and I thought, what in the world? What are you doing there? And go on, get and everything. And he left. He got out of there. we have a big bull moose that likes to hang out on our property, and but he kind of just trotted off, and then they kind of stopped and looked back, kind of, don't try following me, I'll stomp you good or whatever. But so I didn't think anything of it. Well, I went back to check later that day on my garlic, crop, and it was all gone. So the moose, he had some good garlic there, I guess. But so much for my experience with gardening. But we actually had another guy, a neighbor of mine, was telling me that there's a big broccoli farm going up towards Presque Isle, and and he's related to him. His last name's Smith, and he's related to the family, I guess, that runs that, cousins or something like this. And he said that the moose came in one night, and it had to have been a couple of them, but they ate 40 acres of broccoli, destroyed 40 acres of broccoli. I don't know if it was one night. I shouldn't say one night, but it was maybe a couple nights or whatever. But yeah, 40 acres. So you get, a moose, they can do a lot of damage quickly. So if you live in an area, even deer or whatever else, you have to make sure that you have fencing up and whatever around your garden, and that can run into a lot of money depending on what type of fencing that you buy. So all those things are considerations. And again, I'm speaking to everybody here. Some of you probably are out there, nodding your head saying, yeah, I've had experiences with my garden, whatever. Some of you might be from the city and you're saying, I don't know the first thing about this. You can't just come out and plant some things and there you go, and the animals will leave it alone. They have a way of finding it. I didn't think the moose would be, over and where that one area was where I put my garlic at, because it was kind of not a real nice area and things with a lot of logging damage in that area. And I thought I'll just, grow my, kind of a hidden garden. He found it. So another thing, how are you going to preserve your harvest when you have your garden or your orchard or whatever else? Another part of that is food preservation. You'd be shocked how much food you can actually grow, and which I think it'd be important to remember here as we go into the future. Very uncertain times coming. But how do you preserve it? Through canning, through dehydrating, through, whatever, a root cellar type of thing. We talked about that in one of the other uh, seminars. Another thing to consider, a tractor, if you're going to have a tractor or if you're going to do it by hand, in terms of, do you have a field area on your property that you could actually, go and till it and whatever else that you have to do? Could you actually use a tractor, or would you just want to do it all by hand? That's another thing, another skill set and whatever else. Again, I have no experience at all with that. I was raised in the woods, but there are farms all around us growing up. I'm very familiar with being on farms. But I just never, I'd help out with harvesting and things like that, but I never, used an actual tractor and did all the planting and everything else. So the property that we own actually used to be a potato farm. It's probably about 5 or 6 acres of, tillable land that used to actually be, that they used to raise potatoes on it. It's now all grown over, and it's, a lot of red raspberries and fireweed and things like that. But again, another thing to consider, preserving seeds for the next year. Again, I know a lot of different people, and they would, some of them get really good at that, and they get these heirloom seeds, and you can harvest so much of your crop, and then you keep some of the seeds behind so that you can grow them again the next year. And it's a whole other skill set, to get into that type of thing. And you get into a lot of the seeds that you get at the store, some of that stuff's GMO and not real good. So these are all things you have to think about, is what I'm trying to say. When you decide to go off grid, or even if you're on grid and you say, hey, I want to have a garden, it's a pretty big subject. We had gardens growing up. My father he had the old little harrow, the little thing that you could push. It has two handles coming up, one big wheel in the front, and you could put different types of, like a little plow blade thing, and you just push it and you can do the rows that way. And we would go out, and one of my chores in the summer months was going out and weeding the garden, and then you had to go out and pick green beans and So I'm used to that type of a thing. But we don't really do it where we're at right now. Another thing to consider in terms of growing your food is what is the family pantry, your slash pantry yearly needs. In other words, um, can you grow enough and harvest enough that it will last you through preserving it, that you can last the whole way through to the next growing season, to the next harvest season? That's really kind of the goal that you want to get to, with some things, maybe not everything, but that's kind of a goal that you can set for yourself, to be able to have that family pantry where you can provide your own food. Um, and again, moving forward into the future, that might be the only option, um, if you want to, be able to eat well. And another thing to think about when you are considering all of this and you get into the off-grid life and whatever, and that is, if you invest in a property that has a field that you can grow a lot of stuff in, a lot of crops or whatever they might be, would you be willing to sell the extra harvest, the extra crops or whatever else? That can be a form of income. I mean, you get into some of the really good um, organic heirloom type of growing things. I mean, you can actually sell that stuff. There's a farmer's market not too far from here. You can take your produce and you can trade and you can sell and you can do all kinds of stuff. A lot of that is really neat. I mean, we have neighbors here, even in the town of Patton, that they grow their own food and things. They have gardens in their backyards and they grow food, and they'll put a little stand out along the road and you can go over and buy things. We buy things from our neighbors, to kind of just support them, and it's a great habit to get into. So if you can grow enough that you have enough for yourself and you say, hey, we have a lot of extra, might be another source of income. Again, things to think about. There's a lot when you get into the off-grid living thing. There's a lot of things that you can do. It's not some boring kind of a life that you just sit around, nothing to do. Oh my no. All right, so number 2, we're going to talk about raising food. Just throw up a little picture here of some livestock, well-known different types of livestock. Raising food. Okay. Question number 1, what type of animals can survive your climate? Okay, there are some animals that might not be able to survive in a really far north environment. Some might not be able to survive in a really hot environment. Again, that's a thing to consider. What kind of climate do you have? What type of animals would be best suited for that climate? Will those animals be safe from predators? Larger livestock, there's not really a whole lot around this area that's going to hurt larger livestock. I mean, black bears, but you don't really hear of them attacking livestock that much. At least I haven't since I've been here. Um, Smaller livestock like chickens, well, there's a lot here that can kill a chicken. You have to be careful about that. I mean, we have really active coyotes on our property right now, but we've seen fishers, we've seen, even a lynx. Um, so there's a lot of different animals, and little short-tailed weasels too. They're can take out chickens. And our dog certainly is not going to protect livestock. He'd probably join with all the predators in killing them. He likes to kill mice, but he's still a puppy. He's actually killed 4 of them already, even as a little puppy. So we're looking forward to him getting bigger and killing more mice. But he's not really a livestock guardian type of dog. If you want one of those, the best type, most well known are the oh, I'm trying to think of the Great Pyrenees. Great Pyrenees are really good livestock, protecting, guarding dogs. Again, something to research if you're into that. What all can you get from your livestock? Just some things, milk, raw milk, all the different milk products, be it butter and cheese, and get into kefir and other things like that. Eggs from your chickens, or duck eggs, or there's what's the small one, quail, I think, or something. I think there's some people that raise those. Different types of meat. Again, if you're raising your meat yourself, it's going to be a lot healthier, a lot better for you. We're very blessed to have farms in the area that raise, grass-fed meats and things, so we can go to them and support them. wool. If you have a sheep or different types of, even some goats and things, you can actually shear them and take that wool and you can, make it into things. Um, Another good option there. Raw honey. I've seen a lot of people doing that in the area. Um, that's another good thing to think about. And there's so many more. I mean, there's obviously a lot that you can do. My sister, older sister, and her husband down in West Virginia, they actually raise Black Angus. I think they have usually right around maybe 12, anywhere from 12 to 20 head of Black Angus down there. That they also have the Highland type of cow, the ones that are really furry and things, real long hair. Um, so, and they, it's kind of funny, steak to them and really nice meat like that is just sort of a, oh, are we having steak again? It's just because they have so much of it. Whole freezers full of the meat. They, keep some for themselves and then they sell some as well for money. A very smart thing to do. I mean, there's a lot of money in grass-fed meat if you can grow them yourself. Um, but what's one of the downsides to raising food? Well, um, animals need to be fed and watered every day, no exception. Especially when you get into milk cows. Um, I've known dairy farmers that they eventually retire and they don't know what to do with themselves because they're used to the routine of you get up 4 o'clock in the morning or something and you're out milking by 5 o'clock year round, 7 days a week, and that's just the way it is. And then you do it. Some will do it once a day or twice a day depending on how you want to do the dairy thing there, but you lose your freedom. Right now, our little dog that we take him with us, and he's the only animal. But if we eventually have a lot of livestock, you're there. You can't travel unless you have a neighbor that can take care of your animals. You're pretty much stuck to your property at that point in time. So that's another thing to consider. Are there farms in your area that you can support with your money and get your milk and your meat and your eggs and whatever else? You're giving them the money that they're looking for, and you're getting the really good high quality produce, and not produce per se, but the meat and everything else um, in return. So that's something to think about. Check into that stuff. Again, if you're looking to buy property someplace, are there any farm stands? Are there any raw milk producers in the area? Are any grass-fed meat people in the area or whatever else? Check into that stuff. Because when you first buy an off-grid property and you're trying to develop that property, you're going to be very busy, and so it would be nice to find a farm in the area that would actually have the really good foods for you. And as the grocery stores, their supply chain issues are there and they're really bad. Local farms aren't really affected that much by supply chain issues because the cattle are right over that way and we sell them right in here, and that's pretty much it. We milk the cows right over there and then we bring the milk over to here and put it there, and that's where you buy it. The chickens are over that way and we bring the eggs in and we sell them right here. They don't have all that overhead cost type of stuff of the grocery store, and there's no big truck bringing it from the big factory farms to the grocery store. So those are big things to think about. There's another issue with the thing of cattle especially, and that is the danger of big animal accidents. All right. If you have some big bull and he decides that he's having kind of a bad day or whatever else, they can crush you. And the one farmer that we know, he's bigger than I am, and he's a big guy. He's probably about 6'5", maybe somewhere in there, and probably 250 to 275 pounds, something like that. He's a big guy, and we went over there the one day, and his wife came out and she said, sorry, we don't have the milk right now. We're trying to go. I'll go get some for you and everything. But she said, he just got, one of our bulls actually, really cornered him and smashed him into the one wall, and then it was stepping on him and things. I guess he had to go to the hospital. The thing really beat him up. Again, my older sister, she was in the one stall, and this big bull, he was a nice he wasn't really cranky or mean, but he just kind of stepped off to the side. And when he did, she was beside him and boom, smashed her into the wall and between him and the wall and kind of broke a couple ribs in her. So, um, that's something to think about again. Um, something to think on. Another thing, a lot of people, they get like chickens especially, and you basically become tied to the feed mill then. There are ways that you can pasture raise your chickens. There are different types of feed. A lot of really interesting um, new thoughts on that, but pretty much if you have chickens, you're going to be buying grain at some point in time. Um, we've looked into the whole thing of having chickens. We have had them on our property, but we just don't. The dependence upon the store is kind of defeating the purpose, because you know the whole idea of really true off-grid living is to become more self-sufficient and self-sustaining. So, oh, hey, Russia's attacking and it's destroying our fuel supply, so the price of fuel goes up, and they can't get the vehicles to deliver the food to the grocery store or the feed to the mill or whatever else. Well, if you're off grid, the whole concept here is I don't need to care about that stuff. There are some things I can get from the store, but I can do without that, and we can produce our own food and whatever else on our property. So the thing of feed mills, I've seen some of these people, and we have this off-grid homestead, and they get, this huge big amount of feed from the mills or Tractor Supply store or something like that. Well, it might be a little bit of a savings of money, but when you factor in all the different costs and everything, sometimes it makes more sense to actually just pay a local farmer and say, okay, you raise that. I'm going to focus on other things here. Another thing that you have to consider is local zoning laws. You might not, depending on where you're at, usually around here, nobody cares. There are actually people in town here that have chickens. You can hear the chickens, the roosters crowing in the morning when we're here really early. Most people don't care. But if you're in certain areas, they might say, hey, your property's not zoned agricultural. You're not allowed to have those chickens or that pig or whatever else, or especially get up into the really big animals. You have a milk cow in your backyard or something, they might not like that. So again, you need to check into that. So finally, we will talk about the last one, the one that's nearest and dearest to my heart, that I've been doing the longest, and that is foraging. Foraging for wild berries. When I was a little boy, that was what I lived for in the summer months. And I can't tell you how many times I got in trouble because I was out stuffing wild berries into my mouth, and when I was supposed to be coming in for supper, and then I was, and being a dumb little boy, and they come in and, were you eating berries? No, and the purple stains on my mouth and my fingers, and I wasn't eating berries. So, but yeah, we had a lot growing up, and it's always been something I've loved to do. And these are one of the more prolific ones up here, especially if your property's recently been logged. If you buy a property that's been logged, red raspberries are one of the first plants that will get into that soil. The birds will plant the seeds for you, and they'll just start to grow. And especially if you have a lot of logging damage, branches and things like that, red raspberries love that whole thing. And the nice thing is too, a lot of animals love the red raspberries as well. So that'll draw in the right kind of wild game. But red raspberries are very prolific up here. This here is a picture of black raspberries. I don't think that they are in Maine. I know that they were in Pennsylvania, but I don't think I've ever seen them in Maine. I think it's probably a little bit too cold for them up here. There's a lot of different types of wild red raspberries. There's we used to call the one we called them wine berries. They were down in Pennsylvania. That's probably not the real term, but that's how I was raised. We called them that, and they're a little bit more tart than a regular red raspberry up here, but very good. And you can definitely pick a large quantity of them, and this is one of the ones that's a lot more prolific. Here's another type of berry that we have, the red Carats, kind of like this one here is what it looks a little bit more like. Some of that other stuff is kind of cultivated, but red Carats, they actually were destroying them in different areas because they supposedly make a blight or something on the white pine trees, and so the logging operations are coming in and spraying all kinds of things, glyphosate and whatever else to kill them. But they're also very tasty. You can find these up here. We did not have those in Pennsylvania, so that's another thing that we really like. There's some of those on our land, which we're happy for. These blackberries are also very good. They're not real sweet. They have a little, they're somewhat sweet, but a little kind of I don't know what you would want to call a little slight bitterness to them as well. But we had these in Pennsylvania, same thing that we have up here, and we have a good amount of them on our land. Again, just very sporadically throughout the property, and we kind of get to know where the certain areas are. And that's another thing that takes time. You'll start to hike in areas and things, and oh wow, there's a whole big patch of whatever here, and wow, that's really neat. And then you learn that spot, and you can come back to that spot year after year. Sometimes it won't yield that much. Other times, depending on the rain, the humidity, the whatever, some plants actually like more of a dry summer. And depending on what you have, you can actually get quite a few of them. So, and here's another one that Maine's very well known for, especially down south, the southern part of Maine, the huge big blueberry fields. Wild blueberries here in Maine are incredible. They're really neat, and you know, they're smaller than the cultivated type, but the taste is much better. That's the way it is with most wild things. Our apples here, a lot of times they're smaller. They're not the real huge big ones you get in the store. Although we have some of those on our property, we have bigger apple trees. But the wild ones that you see as you're going along trails or out old roads and whatever else, they're a lot smaller, but they taste really good. And very same thing with the blueberries. And blueberries are a northern superfood, so as red Carats are as well. The health benefits are really high with this type of berry. And so again, understanding, you say, well, what a waste of time going out and looking for a few berries and whatever. The nutritional value of wild edibles is so far beyond anything that you can raise or grow. That's why I'm a big advocate of it. There's all this talk about, you know, or is it pasture raised? Is it organic? Is it, you know, non-GMO certified? When it's wild, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Okay. And another thing, of course, would be mushrooms. Mushrooms are a really big thing. We're learning more about those. Last year was our first year getting chanterelle mushrooms. We found some. We were out kayaking in one lake, and there was a area where it kind of came out like a little peninsula type of thing or something, I guess. Not an island, but kind of came out from the one part of the lake. And we went on there, and there was chanterelle mushrooms on it, which were incredible. But there's so many things out in the wild that you can pick. And even, I'm talking about berries right now, but even herbs and things like that. There are a lot of wild herbs that are very high medicinal and really good stuff. Another example of these, I think, are probably the first wild edibles that I know of that come in here in Maine, the wild strawberries. And they are very tiny, as you can see in that person's fingers right there. They're just little tiny things, but they taste really good. So, and of course, you have to be careful. If you see some along the roadside, they might be sprayed. Somebody might have gone by and sprayed weed killer on them or something, or whatever. You have to be careful about that. Don't pick them in public areas unless you know for sure that it hasn't been sprayed. Or pick them in areas where nobody would be spraying chemicals on them. That's a very important thing. But certain things like the wild strawberries, there's never enough of them. You can't pick them really to the point of, wow, there's we'll have plenty for the whole winter and into next year or something. No, usually not. These are more of just you pick them and you eat them right then, or you might pick them and put them in some, yogurt or whatever other things that you want to put them in. But they taste very good. Um, Wild red raspberries, like I said earlier, there's usually enough that you can store them up, more than you can pick. I mean, we've picked different days. We've had 5-gallon buckets filled with red raspberries. Red Carats, you can find some, pretty good amount, but not going to be a huge yield with those. Blackberries are similar to red raspberries. If you have enough of them, then it's a plant, and you can see that there will be a lot on the plant. And of course, when they're red, that means that they're not ripe yet. They'll turn that really, really nice dark, almost a black color. Blueberries, you go into some of the areas, there's different types of blueberries. There's the low bush and then the high bush. The low bush ones are just a few inches high. And I think I've told this story before, but I'll just say it again to illustrate my point here. Went over to Baxter State Park, and which is the north entrance of the Appalachian Trail. Mount Katahdin is where the Appalachian Trail gets started, or where it ends up, depending on which way you're going. And we were driving around back in there, and this park ranger, he comes flying up behind me, and he's flashing his lights, and I thought, oh man, what did I do? I thought I was in trouble. Pulled over, and he pulls up beside me, and he said, hey, do you want some blueberries? I said, well, yeah. And he said, here, come on, follow me. And he took me down to this one area, one of the campsite areas, and it was a big field. Whole field is blueberries. It looks very similar to this kind of a thing. You can kind of see behind their hand here. It's out of focus, but you can see just little small, it's like almost like a ground cover, and the whole thing blueberries. And he said, I'm just getting sick and tired of watching the bears come in here and eat these. He said, it'd be neat, if you pick as much as you want. And black flies were out right, at that point in time, so that kind of made it a little bit miserable. Black flies pollinate the blueberries, and but it was neat. I mean, I took my hat off, like just a regular baseball hat, and I was, picking them, and I didn't have they have these little rake things that you can get, that you can pick blueberries. You can pick red Carats with them. And there's another one. See if I can, let me just look that up quick. Okay, let me show this quick here. Another one that you can pick with the little berry rake thing is this right here, choke cherries. Choke cherries can be used if you cook them. They're not really all that great raw. You can actually ferment them, and they can be turned into sort of a wine type of a thing and whatever else. Not that you're going to sit around and get drunk with it or whatever else, but it's just a fermented drink. We actually made some the one time that was wild apples and choke cherries together, and they fermented a little bit, made a really tasty drink. Really good stuff. We like to cook them down, and then we put them through a strainer, and then the juice that comes out of it, we have that as, it's like a cherry flavored juice. Really tastes good, and we'll actually mix it in with our raw milk, and it makes the raw milk turn purple. It tastes like blueberry. It's amazing. And and people up here, most people don't even bother with these things. They just drive right by them. You see them along the road. The trees are just sagging with all these choke cherries, and you can pick a lot of them pretty quickly. And see if I can look up a berry rake here, just so people can know what I'm talking about. I'll go over this way here. Okay. Right there you can see the different types of berry rakes. This is the type we have right here, this red one. But you just can go and it takes the berries off, and usually it just leaves the leaves on there. So you can pick a lot of things like choke cherries or blueberries like that. You can pick them very quickly with that. And I mean, you go down to southern Maine to some of these big blueberry plantations, and they have these two-handed berry rakes, and just get them and then dump them into a 5-gallon bucket. You can harvest huge amounts of berries. Again, wild apple trees, another big thing. So foraging for wild fruits, herbs, mushrooms, there's a lot of neat things that you can get like that. And the health benefits are off the charts. They're a lot better than stuff that you'll get in the store. And another thing, which I'm not going to bother putting any pictures up because you can use your own imagination here, but hunting and fishing. There's another great way to obtain a lot of food. Talked to a guy that actually hunted up in our area here, and he got a moose the one time, and after all of the hide and the bones and everything was taken away, he had 900 pounds of meat. So that's a lot of meat, and incredible stuff, of course. And then you have small game. You have what they call partridge or partridge, if you want to say it the New England way. And but you know, they're grouse, like a ruffed grouse. There's turkey, wild turkey. There's a lot of different wild animals here. You have to again study it for your area. Different types of deer and things. I know when I was in Montana, they had white-tailed deer, but they also had mule deer out there, plus elk and moose. Where my brother was at, you get up into Alaska, they have caribou up there, and there's just so many different things that you can get, and you can literally shoot some of these bigger animals like that, hunting license and the whole deal. I'm not saying going out and poaching or whatever, but I'm saying you can go out and you can, get an animal like that, and then you have your year's worth of meat. So that's another thing that is definitely a possibility for those who want to go off grid. Um, Finding food, the hunter-gatherer type of a thing, in other words. And can you do that 100%? I don't know. Some people have tried. I guess maybe you could if you were really dedicated or something and you didn't have much else to do. But going and supporting local farmers with the produce that they sell, with the um, the meat, the milk, the cheese, the whatever else, it's good for the local economy. It helps out people. So that's going to be it for what I have to say on that. We definitely are more of the option number 3, the finding food. We enjoy that very much. I've always liked to go fishing and hunting since I was a boy. Lots of stories on that. And of course, foraging for wild edibles is great as well. So, does anybody have any questions about this? Did I miss anything? Would anybody like to add any other things to this? If you want to write a question, just write question in capital letters, and then after that, whatever your question is. That helps me see it better. So I'll just leave the blueberries up there just to torture people. Hobo fishing kit is cheap solution for fishing. Not sure what you mean by hobo fishing kit. Maybe just like a line, like a string and a hook and stuff like that. That might be what you mean, I guess. I could spend another couple hours on fishing and hunting and things, and the proper tools of the trade, we'll say. I'm kind of a bit of a fanatic for that stuff. I actually got into something this past year, a tenkara rod for fishing, fly fishing. It doesn't have a reel. It's a telescoping rod that you take it out, and then you can kind of flip your fly out into the water and whatever else, and pretty neat. You can carry it, telescopes down to just a little tube, throw it in your backpack or whatever else, and you can pack into places and things. So experimented with that this past year. But question: what kind of apples are grown near you? Wild ones. I don't really know if they have names to them. Um, in terms of Granny Smith or Macintosh or whatever. I don't really know. I think those are more cultivated type, but there's so many different types of wild apples up here. There's some that are just bright red. There's some that are red and yellow, different colors. There's some that are green apples. There's some that are all yellow, and they have different flavors to them and things. Sometimes you'll see an apple hanging from a tree. Like the ATV trails are just notorious. You go through the field areas, and there'll be apple trees, and apples are just all over the trail in the fall. And there's times I'd pick an apple, and as I'm riding by, I just reach up and grab an apple, and stand up and grab one, and you take a bite, and you're like, it doesn't even taste that good. And then you go down a little bit further, and there's one, and oh, that's really good actually. It tastes really neat. So um, I don't know. I've never actually talked to anybody about um, can you actually classify these wild apple trees, because I think it's more of a pollination thing. The way that the bees just pollinate it, that it comes out. Some are really small little apples, other ones get full size, or I don't know. I'm not an expert on um, identifying wild apples. I missed this one here. How hard is it to raise beef? Um, I don't really have a lot of experience with it, but it's if you have enough pasture land where they can go out and they can eat the grasses and things, and then you can move them from that pasture to another pasture, let the grass regrow. It's not a real big deal. You have to watch their health and whatever else and things, but um, you know, it's not impossible for people. Um, Question: aquaponics are area independent. Only the plants are dependent on weather. My country pushing local farmers to get into aquaponics. It saves on water and very efficient, run on solar. Yeah, it's something I've heard of. People have sent me links to things, but I've never really looked into it much. If someone doesn't own a lot of land, how can they go foraging without risk of trespassing? A lot of times you can find national parks, local parks, state parks, and usually the park rangers, they will say, okay, hey, you can go in here and forage and get some stuff. Usually, sometimes they can get weird about it, but um, you can go in and you can pick wild edibles and do some foraging there. I mean, if you're coming in with a tractor, with a big wagon or something and trying to haul off everything, they will have a problem with that. But um, and if you'd see somebody's property, they're not picking it, you can always go talk to them as well and just say, hey, do you mind if I pick some berries out there or whatever? How about cherries, nuts, and elderberries? Yeah, nuts. I forgot to mention about that. There are different types of nuts out there. We have hazelnuts, beaked hazelnuts on our property. That's another one. I did not mention that. So yeah, that's another one. But cherries. Uh, in Pennsylvania, they had what was called a bird cherry. Prunus avium was the botanical name for the tree, and we had that growing up, and they were really good, like a little black cherry. And then there was the actual black cherry tree, which is more of a timber tree. That's Prunus serratina was the botanical name for that tree. I studied botany for a little while, but those had really small little cherries like the choke cherry tree. They weren't really all that edible. Elderberries, we actually have both the black elderberry here and then also the red elderberry, which the red elderberry, I don't usually mess with that because they say that the seed is really bad. It can put you into a coma if you eat it. So from what I've studied, I haven't ever tried it. I just kind of, okay, not really worth it. And the animals and birds and things, they really like the red elderberries. So I just hands off, let the birds have them. Um, yeah, yeah. We actually went out and spent a pretty good day foraging for the beaked hazelnuts, and and spent you know a lot of time. We got a good amount of them, and was under the impression that you let them dry out, just put them out, kind of dehydrate them almost, put them in the sunlight, let them dry, and then when they kind of crack open, then you can get the nut out and everything. But ended up drying the nut out too, so that was not a real smart thing to do, because they're not very big. The nut inside them, you're better off just eating it when it's, the plant itself is green, just raw like that. Don't try to roast them or anything. They're very tiny little nuts. Of course, down in Pennsylvania, we had black walnuts, we had English walnuts, we had all the different types of hazelnut, which, the other thing that's really neat about wild edibles, oftentimes animals like them just as much as we do. So you can actually get to know where the different trees are at. And like the partridge up here, grouse, whatever you want to call them, they love apples. And so if you have a good apple tree, a good, like a grove of apple trees or whatever else, you'll see grouse there. And I remember when I was a boy, I got so good with hunting the gray squirrels down in Pennsylvania. I could walk through the woods and I could hear them chewing the hazelnuts, or the hickory, not hazelnuts, excuse me, hickory nuts, shagbark and pignut hickory trees. And then they had the hickory nuts, and they'd be up in the tree, chewing on it, and I could listen for that sound, and I would just look up and see where they're at, and then squirrel meat. Question: I get organic frozen wild berries at the store here in the city. Do you think those are good to get, or do they do something to the berries? Of course, I'd like to pick my own regardless. Probably good, depending on where they're coming from. And another little scam I'll let everybody know about here in Maine. They have been doing this for a very long time. Knew a realtor that was telling me about this, and we saw it being done. They only harvest a certain number of blueberries, and then they destroy the rest of the crop to keep the price up of the blueberries. I'm not joking. They used to burn the blueberry fields and things, and they also put poison on the blueberry fields to keep the price inflated. So, real nice. Question: can I get your opinion or some suggestions on what would be a good state to move to for off-grid living from Chicago, Illinois? In your area, I'd say maybe Michigan, Upper Peninsula, depending on how far out you want to go. If you don't want really remote areas, then there might be some areas, maybe Iowa, or maybe some areas of Illinois or whatever, farm country, back roads. But if you really want the wilderness, northern living, Upper Peninsula Michigan is a good spot if you're in the Midwest. Okay. Question: what is Oliver's favorite food to forage? He's been a fanatic for it. I mean, even the weird part is, it's kind of a weird story here, but when he was in in the womb of my wife, we would actually say, we're going to go pick berries, and he would actually kick when we would say that. And we tried a couple times. We'd say, no, it couldn't have been about berries. And we'd say about, okay, let's go get some, we'd say some other word, and then we'd say berries, and he would start kicking again. So he's been a fanatic for a very long time, all of his life. He's loved wild berries. He prefers, I think, probably the wild strawberries are probably his favorite, but he likes blueberries as well. But he loves the strawberries. Are there any honeybees near you? What kind of honey is sold near you? We do have some people that do honey, like wild honey, in our area. And on our land, there definitely are honeybees. They're actually not real aggressive or anything else. We can be out picking red raspberries, and they're just kind of flying around. And there's been times that they'll land on my arm and just fly off. They don't really bother you or anything. Not the same as like a yellow jacket or a hornet. Question: Brother Brian, how can we reach people in the 1040 window, like sending them King James Version Bibles and biblical teaching? I only find ecumenical organizations doing this work, and that's bad. Yeah, there's a great need out there. The internet is a good way to reach people, but moving forward, I don't know. Things are going to change with the whole setup of how everything works. National boundaries and war and whatever just be open, pray about it, what the Lord would have you do. Question, have you tried beech nuts? No, I have not. The small green apples are called crab apples, not fit to eat. Yeah, I didn't mean the small, like the, I know what, I should make a mention of that. Crab apples, yeah. I'm talking, we actually have apples on our property that are smaller green ones, maybe about the size of a, like a golf ball or something. They're a little bit bigger. They're not quite the same size as a big apple. And they were actually really good. Our one old apple tree had green apples, so they were good. But the beech nuts, that's another one I forgot to mention. We had those down in Pennsylvania. We have them here, kind of a little triangular shaped nut thing. And no, I've never gotten around to trying those. I always forget myself, and I think, you know, the little squirrels, little red, brown squirrels, whatever, those little guys, they usually get them. So I don't really see that many of them, but I have not tried those. I'd like to sometime. Question, are there any succotash, turnip, squash, and such being sold in the area? Or I'm not really sure. We don't really grow that much in terms of you know, gardens and whatnot at this point. So same question as the previous person. What do you think is a good location for off-grid living? I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you. Well, there's probably some good areas in Arizona that would be a good place, or good, you know, yeah, good place to go off-grid. Again, you'd have the hot climate there and whatever else. You might have the challenges of, you know, more of a desert type of climate and things. So just do some research. If you want to move north, you know, if you're in Arizona, maybe like some areas of Wyoming, maybe Idaho, Montana, places like that would be good. Do you use loofahs? No, I don't. We have a few around, but I don't really use them that much. Loofah sponge, it's, people don't know what that is. Huckleberries, yeah. My brother, when he was in Montana, he was really big on, they'd go out picking huckleberries, but I don't think we have them here, unfortunately. So I'm gonna try to stick with the off-grid type of thing here. So we actually had an apple tree out along the end of our property out near the road, and it had these kind of ugly little yellow apples on them, and they weren't real big. And I just kind of thought, you know, they'll just let those ones fall down. They actually were getting ripe and falling first, and I just thought, they don't look that nice. Those are usually pretty bad tasting and whatever. You know, usually there's another tree we have that has the yellow apples, and didn't think to pick any, and so we were out actually with our apple picker, the big long extending type with a little claw there and in the basket, and we were out picking some, and I saw one. I thought, well, I'll just try one, and I picked it and tasted it, and oh man, it was so good, just so sweet, like a honey sweetness to it. And I thought, oh man, so we were not ready for that. We have so many apple trees on our property that we just can't pick them all. So I'll just answer this one quick. Can I translate your videos from English to Spanish? Yes, you can, as long as you don't change the content. That's all I ask. Black chaga, yeah, chaga mushroom. We have those around. We do find those occasionally. If you don't know what chaga mushroom is, it's, you can basically take it and chop it into pieces and then put it in with some boiling water, and you can make a really nice black, real dark black, like a coffee look, like a tea, and it's extremely healthy, really good, very high in magnesium. Question, do you make your own bread? I never made my own bread. My wife does. She can make bread. We haven't been able to in a while because we just haven't had an oven really all that accessible and things. You know, right now we just cook everything on a wood stove, so no way to cook anything on the inside of the wood stove as far as baking is concerned. And I know that you can get little, you know, oven or stovetop little oven things and whatever. Coleman used to make them, but we don't bother with that. So right now we don't really do much with bread. So crazy story about chaga. My old neighbor got rid of her stomach cancer with it. She made tea. You actually heard the one time that when they had the Chernobyl incident there in the northern part of Russia and Siberia, that the people who survived it were the ones that were drinking chaga regularly. So supposedly I've heard that it can take any kind of radioactive type of stuff out of your body. It's good stuff. It really is. I love the taste of it. So, and of course I'm not sure too, you get down more down south and you can grow peaches and pears and other things as orchard type trees as well. Um, Growing up in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the road I grew up on was called Peach Lane because the one farm actually had a big peach orchard. So I don't know if people can grow that up here or not. I haven't really looked into that. We're more just, into the wild edible type of stuff. Automation is killing jobs and the government won't be there to help us. We have to learn to be self-sufficient. A big amen to that. Absolutely. I have pear and plum trees. Oh, I didn't know that. Wow, that's pretty neat. We we're still fairly new on our property. We haven't really had time to develop much of it or whatever else. Um, why don't hirelings get exposed by their own people, especially the millionaire ones that can help the homeless and whatnot? People that go to church buildings are under peer pressure and mind control. That's why most of them never go after the pastor. They're afraid of being made fun of from the pulpit and whatever, which the pastors will do. It's happened to me. Um, Question, I know it's off topic, but what do you think of the situation with Ukraine? The whole world seems to be against Russia, Putin. It's it's a big issue. They're just going to use this thing to continue messing with the economy and whatever else. It's just disgusting. And again, you just have to get to the point, like the earlier commenter there said, Bill, up there. You just have to get to a point where you're self-sufficient. And you just say, whatever, I can find food on my own. I actually heard of the story of there was a guy out in Idaho, and he wrote a book. Rick Shaben, I think his name is. I have his book someplace here, and his grandmother went through the Nazi Holocaust, and she was in one of the death camps, and they had her, out working in the crews. She was just a young girl at the time, but they had her out working in the, work teams and whatever else, and she knew wild edibles. And so while the other prisoners were starving, she said the guards, when they would look away, she'd grab a couple, wild edibles, quick stuff them in her mouth, and back to work. And she survived. She got through it. Everybody else was starving and getting sick, and she survived. So even worst case scenario of you're in a camp someplace and whatever else, if you can spot dandelion greens, those will keep you alive. And any kind of wild berries and whatever else, they'll do very good for your system. So, question, do you think we will be here when they start banning private food production? Well, they already did it in Michigan. That stupid woman, governor or whatever, she was trying to ban people from having gardens because of COVID or something. What? What's that have to do with anything? So yeah, they'll go after stuff. Of course they will. Your cows leaving too much gas out into the atmosphere with flatulence or whatever else, and he's warming the planet. we have to tax it or you have to get rid of it. You just eventually just say, whatever, God's going to protect me. Just that simple. Question, raising livestock. Is there any reason from a nutritional sense to avoid raising unclean animals, Old Testament, pigs, etc.? Your thoughts, thanks. In the New Testament, there are no more unclean animals. That has been done away with. So to go back to that, if you're Jewish or something and you don't want to eat pork, well, that's fine. But, again, look for the animals that grow very well in your area and raise those. There's no prohibitions in the New Testament about eating any type of animal. If you like pork, then eat pork. Plain and simple. And well, there's, I can prove studies though. I get this thing all the time from people. I can show you study after study where it shows that pork products have parasites in them and all this other stuff. Okay, where are they raised? Well, they're raised on factory farms. That's right. You're looking at Joel Salatin. He's a guy that's into a lot of the pastured raising of different things, and he actually raises his swine out in the woods. Woodland swine, and we buy some of that in our area, and it's really good stuff. It does not taste like the pork that you get from the store. So I mean, you can raise anything bad, including fruits and vegetables, GMO and whatever. You can raise cattle in really disgusting environments, and milk the cows in really bad environments, and you have to pasteurize it, homogenize it, destroy every kind of nutritional thing in it, just to make it so that it won't kill you when you drink it. I mean, you can make bad things about anything like that. So, question, what foods do you stray away from? Foods I don't mess with are ones that have a lot of preservatives in them, a lot of processed foods and things like that. So, but that's going to be it, I guess, for this video here. Tomorrow, I think, is the one. Let me see what my notes here. Yeah, number 12, off-grid seminar number 12, on the terrible toilet. So talking about getting rid of waste, or rather maybe utilizing waste on a off-grid property. So my different experiences with that. So we will end this one for now. So yeah, we'll end this one here, and then we will be back tomorrow with talking about the ultimate subject there. A lot of most people, when you talk off grid, they'll say, "I don't want to have an outhouse." That's the first thing that most people think of. It's this terrible thing to have an outhouse. I just can't imagine having an outhouse. It's not quite as bad as you'd think, first and foremost, and there are alternatives to it. So actually, when you get off grid for a while, I actually don't like flush toilets now. So, so that's going to be it. And we will see everybody tomorrow in the off-grid seminar part 12. So thank you very much for watching. Please make sure to hit the like button to help the video get ranked.